Hello, BookTube. I have a bit of mail for you on a Friday, wonderful blue-skied Friday where my dog and I did a lot of walking around. And then, as promised, rain has moved in. So it rained all day yesterday, all day long, just steadily rained all day yesterday. And then today was clear, and now tonight it's raining again, and looks like it's going to rain for hours. That is wonderful. Boston really, really needs this kind of rain. So that's wonderful. It's also, I don't need to tell you, it's really, really nice. The sound of rain pattering on the window panes is really, really nice for reading. Uh, so we'll look at the packages here, including a periodical. The London Review of Books finally showed up. Uh, and it has a review of a couple of books. There are a couple of books in here that get nice, long reviews that I have read and liked. Fancy Bear Goes Fishing and the Meaning of Prehistory, the Invention of Prehistory. I want to read all the reviews in here. And I'm going to skip the political content, but I want to read all the reviews, especially the stuff that I've read myself. Although now at the end of the year, seeing reviews like that and also the Times Literary Supplement's Books of the Year is reminding me once again, as these things always do at the end of every year, how many books I wanted to review during the year that I didn't review. If I come back to all of this next year, I'm thinking I want to seriously improve that batting average. But before we get to the packages, I want to read a letter from the letters page here because it infuriated me. I'm reading between the lines in order to be infuriated, but I don't think I'm too off base. We'll see what you think. This is from an author in Aberdeen. Tom Shippey doesn't question the opinion that plague carried off half the Western Europe population during the Black Death. So Tom Shippey was reviewing a recent book and mentioned that claim. As a microbiologist, I have reservations, and contemporary accounts mislead. John Wycliffe claimed that the Black Death had caused the number of students at Oxford to fall from 6,000 to 3,000. Hastings Rashtal, in his classic history of medieval universities, poured cold water on Wycliffe, commenting that, quote, the medieval mind was prone to exaggeration, especially where figures are concerned. It delighted in good round numbers and was accustomed to make confident statements entirely without adequate data, close quote. And when another plague returned, Daniel Defoe wrote of people being more addicted to prophecies and astrological computations, dreams, and old wives' tales. And then the author concludes with, there is nothing new under the sun. And you might be wondering how, even at my South Boston finest, I could find something to be irritated about in that letter. It's actually a number of things to be irritated about in that letter. It's true that Rashtal poured cold water all over Wycliffe's claim that attendance at Oxford dropped from 6,000 to 3,000. But Rashtal was wrong. Wycliffe was wrong as well, if you turn in terms of him knowing an exact head count. But the writer of the letter acts like anecdotal evidence from John Wycliffe is the only way that we know about mortality rates during the Black Death. And it isn't true. We have burial records, we have actual burial sites, we have parish records and whatnot, extensively, all throughout Europe. So you start to wonder, well, why would the author do that? Why would the author of this letter put all of this on anecdotal evidence from John Wycliffe as though to imply that, well, what is the implication here? What implication can there possibly be here? It certainly is not upward, right? The implication of the letter is downward. The implication from someone who ostentatiously identifies himself as a microbiologist is that Wycliffe was wrong because he was exaggerating the mortality. And by extension, we are exaggerating. Tom Shippey and the rest of us are exaggerating the mortality. That the Black Death wasn't really that bad. And the author of the letter underscores that by mentioning that Daniel Defoe mentioned during the Journal of the Plague year that people at that time, during that plague, were slave to any oracle or fantasy that struck their mind. Again, exaggerating the results rather than downplaying them. So you might think when you read that also is false. All of that is false. And you might think when you read that letter that the author is juxtaposing Defoe against Wycliffe and saying, what was the line? There is nothing new under the sun. And I don't think that's true. This is where I'm reading between the lines in order to get irritated. I think the author is talking about COVID-19 and saying, well, Wycliffe was wrong, wildly exaggerated how deadly this plague was, and Daniel Defoe commented that people were wildly exaggerating how dangerous this plague was. And boy, there's nothing new under the sun, implying we're all exaggerating, as if there's no hard data. So before I even got to the rest of the review, I got a nice blast of COVID denialism in my face in the letters page, which is not what I was expecting from resuming a subscription to the London Review. But anyway, let's move on to the books so that I can get less outraged instead of more. So we have most of the packages here are very thin, but I'm not worried about that anymore because I have a poetry guy. So the terror that slim volumes of poetry once held for me is gone. I have a poetry guy. So let's see. Oh, okay. All right. Well, yeah. I have a poetry guy, but remember what we said in a slightly earlier mail haul. I mentioned, I should have remembered it, that once upon a time, forever and ever on this channel, and long before I had a channel like this, I would always say that if I got a tiny package in the mail, it meant either a book catalog, none of which are printed anymore. They're all ebooks. They're all electronic. I have a bunch of them in a folder. Or it's a slim volume of poetry. And I need to remember in the 21st century to add one other category because TikTok has completely destroyed the human ability to concentrate. The internet, social media, and dopamine hits, roulette wheel of mice at the pleasure button has completely eroded the human ability to concentrate. And so tiny little packages like this whole pile here could be just full freestanding books that happen to be 100 pages soaking wet. And that's what we have here. This is by Mike Pepe, and it's called Against Platforms, Surviving Digital Utopia. And it comes out in January. And it's a tiny little thing. So this is a manifesto against the corrosive effects that platforms have had on coagulating opinions, creating mobs, creating flash mob sensibilities, and how pervasive that is in the lives of everybody on Earth, including the billion people in India. And it's this big. Let's see here. At the turn of the millennium, digital technologies seem to have immense promise of transforming our society, and they have. They have very much done that. With these powerful new tools, the thinking went, we would be free to live our best lives, connected to our communities in ways full of infinite potential. A quarter of a century on, this form of utopianism seems like a cruel mirage. We are infinitely more connected now. Not all negatively. It's not a cruel mirage. We're all infinitely more connected with the people we love, with the people we care about. Our lives are more fragmented and pressure-filled as ever. Okay, that should be than ever, as we race to keep up with technologies that manipulate, command, and drain us at every turn. So what happened? In this book, technologist and creator Mike Pepe lays out an explanation of what went wrong and a manifesto for putting it right. He masterfully synthesizes a decade plus of technology criticism into a personal and introspective look at the dark ideological underbelly of Silicon Valley and the gradual replacement of institutions with digital platforms. It is this hidden ideology that must be dismantled if we are to harness technology to the fullest expression of our humanity. Okay, do I want to know who this guy is? A technologist. You've already mentioned that. I bet you couldn't define it, but you've already mentioned it. An author who has written widely about the intersection between culture and the internet. An art critic and theorist, he self-identifies as part of the tech left, digital natives who want to reshape technology as a force for progressive good. Okay. All right, this comes out in the first week of January. So those of you who, like me, love reading about this incredibly seismic change in all of our lives, the technology on the internet, social gatherings, social media manifestations on the internet, you're not going to want to miss this. right? I might have issues with the pub sheet, but we're all going to want to read this. You're watching me on a platform, after all. People on platforms are enormously influential. They can swing presidential elections, among many, many other things. So this guy knows what he's talking about, and it's right there, right on the nose as a subject. So you're definitely going to want to read it. You might not agree with it. Anyway, let's move on to this next one. It's got slightly more heft to it. We'll see. An invoice. What have we got here? Oh, great. Oh, okay. Boy, that came quick. Some West Virginia University Press. I was intrigued by this when publicists reached out to me. I don't think I asked for this. No, I've asked for a ton of books in the last 3 weeks, so I'm a little blurry. But I didn't ask for this. Instead, I was intrigued by it because in one way, it seems so quintessentially a university press type thing. This is by Joanna Allen, and it is called Saharan Winds, Energy Systems and Aeolian Imaginaries in Western Sahara. Very specific. Not a lot of popular appeal, you might think. So let's see. As the climate crisis ensues, a transition away from fossil fuels becomes urgent. Would have been nice if America could have led the way. However, some renewable energy developments are propagating injustices such as land grabs, colonial dispossession, and environmentally destructive practices. Changing the way we imagine and understand wind will help us ensure a globally just wind energy future. Saharan Winds contributes to a fairer energy horizon by illuminating the role of imaginaries, how we understand energy sources such as wind and the meaning we attach to wind, in determining the wider politics, whether oppressive or just, associated with energy systems. This book turns to various cultures and communities across different time periods in Western Sahara to explore how wind imaginaries affect the development, management, and promotion of wind farms, the distribution of energy that wind farms produce, vitally the types of politics mediated by all these elements combined. I'm not sure I understand what an imaginary is in this concept. The dashed off description is how we understand energy sources such as wind and the meaning we attach to wind. I'm not sure I understand that. Surely the origin of the wind is immaterial in the wind energy industry. Surely it's where the collector is that matters. I guess this author will tell me. Highlighting the wind fuel depression of colonial energy systems, the book shows the potential offered by nomadic, indigenous wind imaginaries for contributing to a fairer energy future. I have no idea what that could mean. If you're nomadic, I don't care if you're indigenous or not, but if you're nomadic, then you can't set up the infrastructure necessary to collect and transform wind energy into anything useful on a large scale, which is, I would imagine, the whole thing about fairer energy future. You need an institution, you need an installation in order to do that. You can't do that if you're a nomadic. The author is clearly going to be the expert on this, so I will. Are you? Joanna Allen is an associate professor of global development at Northumbria University. Okay, that's a great institution. I guess my point was that this struck me as really strange, a really keyhole kind of thing, and maybe not. Maybe it's not, because it could be a vital energy revolution for the rest of the world. Not for the United States. The United States official government position in 59 days is that windmills cause cancer. But everywhere else in the world, the United States is not the only place in the world. So most other places in the world will not have that as an official government policy. And the wind never stops blowing. In a lot of places, it never stops blowing at certain altitudes. This could be really fascinating. This is what this makes me smile. Actually, the original reach out from the publicist made me smile, because this is the sort of thing that university presses can do. This wouldn't have made it past one pitch meeting at Hachette or HarperCollins before it was shot down. But a university press can bring this to the public, and that's amazing. That's always enheartening for me, and it sounds like I'll learn a lot from it. Anyway, let's move on to this next one. Okay. Oh, it's another early January thing. All right, I'm sorry, I'm flashing back because this is like the 50th book I've read with this title. It's almost at embargo territory. This is by Michael Grumley and is called Cold Storage, because what isn't called Cold Storage? It shouldn't be called Cold Storage. I guarantee you, in the first chapter of the book, I wouldn't need to go any further than that. In the first chapter of the book, I would find a truly distinctive title, something that's not a cliche or an idiom. It's your name on the book. It's your book in libraries. It's your book in antiquated libraries. This is a physical object. It's going to live in the world long after you and your descendants are gone, and you're giving it a title that was co-opted by someone else? A title that's just an idiom? Anyway, let's see here. So this is an expansive new standalone thriller in the author's Revival series, exploring humanity's thirst for immortality at any cost. Okay, so this is part of a series, but the publisheet's going out of its way to say standalone. Okay. Technology never works well the first time, or even the second. Except when it does, right? Except when it's the telephone. Any Army veteran, John Rafe, is living proof. John is revived in the back of a dilapidated ambulance, on the run from a shadowy organization that is desperate to take him back. He is the first one, their archetype, and they need to know what happened after his escape, what is happening to his body and mind, and they need to know now. Because he knows things he shouldn't, about them and what they are hiding, a secret that has been in cold storage for several hundred years, and the insidious methodological plan that has been in motion for half a century. John is their key, a problem and a solution, a lab rat gone rogue at the worst possible time, but they will find him. They have to, and they will stop at nothing to get what they want. Okay, so that is obviously intentionally vague. Yeah, the word standalone is all over the place here. So do any of you know the history of this thing? Okay, the Revival series is 2 books. This is only the second. Oh, that's much better than I thought. First book is called Deep Freeze. Jeez, give your book a title, not somebody else's title. So we have Deep Freeze and then Cold Storage. So this is only the second book in the series. You shouldn't. I mean, I'm glad that they're marketing it as a standalone. That'll be better for the book. But any author should be able to situate the reader after only one previous book. I wonder if I have Deep Freeze or The Reckoning or whatever its title was. So who is Michael Grumley? That name is very familiar. Best-selling author of the Breakthrough and Monument series. Right, okay. He lives in Northern California with his 2 young daughters, where he's an avid reader, runner, and most of all father, and dotes on his girls every chance he gets. Okay, all right. So Cold Storage. Thriller-level science fiction, it sounds like. So the kind of science fiction that science fiction snobs can read. We'll see. How much it treads on thriller territory will depend on what kind of a badass John Rafe is. I don't know what kind of... We mentioned that he's a lab rat with changes to his mind and his body. So I don't know what kind of superpowers he'll have. But that comes out in January. And then we have a box, but it's a thin box. It's not really heavy. I have all the heavy 2024 books that I want. There is a book, at least one book, coming out in 2025 that is 1,200 pages long. 1,200 and change. But I don't have that yet, and that would be in a big box, so I don't need to worry about that. Oh, great. Okay, all right. We've already seen this, I think. This is the finished copy. So we're ending with another university press. This is University of North Carolina Press. And this was terrific. I've read it already. And we've already seen it on this channel. This was terrific. Well worth your time. Here, it's by Scribner, and it's Under Alien Skies, Environment, Suffering, and the Defeat of the British Military in Revolutionary America. One of this year's weird books. Genuinely, productively weird books. So what have we got here? The Revolutionary War is often celebrated as marking the birth of American republicanism, liberty, and representative democracy. Yet for the tens of thousands of British and Hessian troops sent 3,000 miles across the Atlantic Ocean to wage war under alien skies, such a progressive picture, as the author reveals, could not have been further from the truth. In this book, he illustrates how foreign soldiers' negative perceptions of the American environment merged with harsh wartime realities to elicit considerable physical, mental, and emotional anguish. Yeah, yeah. So you're marching under the flag of Gentleman Johnny Burgoyne, and suddenly you find that your day's marching order is to wade waist deep through swamp water. So that thing that looks like a woman's scarf that's floating along the water surface straight towards you is a cottonmouth adder. Absolutely deadly. And maybe you step on something that's deadly. Or maybe you disturb an alligator. It doesn't like you disturbing it. Or maybe you're marching with some other general or lieutenant through the woods of Canada or northern New York at the time, and you encounter a bear. When did you encounter a bear? If you're a British mercenary, when did you encounter a bear? Ever in your life? When you're marching and realize, well, okay, our marching orders for the day show that we have to go through 10 miles of forest. So where's the road? And instead, you're shown something that makes Mirkwood from Lord of the Rings look like a picnic ground. A completely impassable old-growth forest that you have to march through. But anyway, let's see here. Whether trudging through alligator-infested swamps, nursing a comrade back to health in rain-sodden tent, or digging trenches in a burned-out port city, most who fought in America under the British Army's flag ultimately deemed themselves strangers fighting in a strange land. For them, revolutionary America looked nothing like the happy land blessed with every climate that revolutionary Republicans so successfully promoted. Instead, the War of Independence descended into a quagmire of anxiety, destruction, and distress at the hands of the American environment, not the American military. There were like I mentioned, there were a handful of books in 2024 that not only carved out a subject matter, but were genuinely odd, hard to classify, and rewardingly so. Very much rewardingly so. Whether it was a history of what the ancient people, the ancient world thought about the seashore, or it was an examination of how humans have characterized human life before the written history, prehistory, or this. Genuinely odd, slightly unclassifiable books that give their talented authors complete free rein to just dazzle, just strike out. I don't agree with everything that was in this book, but I had never thought before about the fact that those British and Hessian mercenaries were entering a world unlike anything they had ever seen before. A natural world, unlike anything they had ever seen before. I knew perfectly well the attrition factor for instance, Burgoyne's army. Burgoyne's army made a cross-land march. It was disastrous. Far more disastrous than any military engagement of the day could have been. And it was because they were marching in an alien planet. And so I knew figures like that, but this book changed it all for me in a wonderful, wonderful way. I'm glad to have it. This looks like a finished copy. I don't have any useful information for you. I only had the invoice, and it's zeroed out on the invoice. And this is a University Press book, so it's not going to have a price anywhere on it. But I recommend it. I don't quite know who I'd recommend it to. Someone who's only interested in just reading about the American Revolution, the battles and the people and the personalities and the politics, maybe not. Someone who's just interested in the natural new world of Audubon, maybe not. I don't know who I'd recommend it to. It's one of the rare, most of the books that came out in 2024 I can recommend, and I know who I can recommend them to. This is one of about five where I love it, but I don't know quite who I'd recommend it to. But anyway, we have Under Alien Skies, we have Cold Storage, uh, a quasi science thriller, quasi science fiction thriller. Sounds pretty good. I'll have to see if I have. What was it? No Turning Back? Whatever the name of the first one was. If you gave it a title, I would remember the title. But you gave it an idiom, and their idioms are a dime a dozen. But anyway, it sounds good. So I'll have to see if I have the first one. Then Saharan Winds. Wind Aeolian power examined by a megawatt intellectual. So probably I will learn a lot. And then Against Platforms. A very brief overview and a manifesto about the corrosive effect of platforms, the corrosive collective effect of platforms. So there you go. That is the mail. That and the London Review of Books, which I will mostly try to devour for its reviews rather than getting hung up on one ignorant letter. So that's the mail for today, and I'll wrap this up for now. But I'll be back. Thank you, BookTube.